For the next 30 minutes, you have a chance to call the law. Keith Williams and Don Higley are here to answer your criminal and civil law questions. Call now, 561-TALK. That's 561-8255.
Good evening, Eastern North Carolina, and welcome to Call the Law. I'm your host, criminal attorney Keith Williams, and with me is my co-host, civil attorney Don Higley. We're here every Tuesday night from 6:30 to 7, live on the radio, 103.7, the source for talk, news, and information, and live on the TV, Greenville's Cable Channel 7. This is your chance to talk to a lawyer for free, to learn everything you always wanted to know about the law, but were afraid to ask. We invite you to call us at 561-TALK. That's 561-8255, and join the conversation. Don, coming at them live tonight, Tuesday, February 28th, 2012.
Yeah, we got a hot live streak going. It's been a while since we've taped one.
That's right, that's right. And if you'd like to call us tonight on our live show, we invite you to give us a call at 561-TALK, 561-8255. If you have questions about the criminal law for me, questions about the civil law for Don, or questions for Don in particular that may fall in a chapter he has written that has just been published in a new book.
Yeah, it's a New York Times bestseller. We've already burned 1 million copies of this. Personal injury practice.
If you're watching on TV, you can see that we're holding a first edition personal injury practice in North Carolina. And seriously, Don, congratulations. You've been published.
Thank you. Yes, going to buy 5 copies for my mama, who actually is a lawyer, so that'll help.
Now, this is a thick book, and I'm looking here at the number of pages, and I'm not seeing any pictures. Runs to 720-some. Did you write all 720 pages, or were you a contributing author?
I was just a contributor. I wrote the chapter on insurance coverage related to car accidents, so that's an exciting subject.
Covers topics such as?
And it got out of control. I started out with like 5 pages, and before I knew it, I had 41, and then it kept going and kept going. And now there is, I think, something like 50 pages in this book, all insurance coverage, uninsured motorist coverage, as we've talked about on the show.
Yeah.
When you get hit by somebody who doesn't have any insurance, then your uninsured motorist coverage kicks in. Underinsured motorist coverage, which is when you get hit by somebody who doesn't have as much coverage as you have. And then basic issues about whether there is coverage at all, what's a resident under the policy, what kind of acts are covered, the various exclusions in the standard policy, and then a concept called stacking, where if you get in a wreck, sometimes there's more than one policy that covers you. You can combine them together and be covered. So you really have to be a special human being to care about that kind of thing enough to to research all of that. How many footnotes are in this chapter? I think it was something like 183 footnotes.
Well, Don is humble, but congratulations to Don. Very few attorneys are published in a book like that, and while this book is written specifically for attorneys, I'm sure it's available to the general public on the North Carolina Academy of Justice or Advocates of Justice website, ncaj.com. If you have a car wreck case, go to Don Higley. He wrote the book on it.
That's right. And as Keith knows, we have lots of lawyer listeners, and it actually would be a good book to have for a lawyer. It's really good. My chapter is what it is, but there are excellent other chapters that could really guide you through your basic representation of somebody hurt in a car wreck.
Great, great. Congratulations. 561-8255, 561-TALK. We've got Jennifer holding on the line. Jennifer, welcome to Call the Law.
Thank you.
How are you tonight?
My question is simple. What do you have to prove alienation of affection?
Well, that'd be a question for me. Alienation of affections is that there's 2 different causes of action. And by the way, these are sometimes called heart-bomb torts, and North Carolina is one of a very few states to have it still survive. But there are 2 causes of action, one for alienation of affections and one for criminal conversation. Criminal conversation, you just have to prove one incident of sexual conduct between somebody that's not married. And that, of course, it's a family show and my kids could be watching, so I'll leave it at that. With alienation of affections, the theory there is that somebody has stolen the spouse. So the paramour or the significant other of the spouse gets sued on a theory that you have through your guiles taken away my spouse. And so proving that obviously usually involves some sort of sexual conduct, but you don't technically have to prove that. You just have to prove that you had a loving marriage and then that person was stolen away by the third party. And you might say, well, gosh, you couldn't really win one of those in court, could you? But they have some very, very big verdicts on the books resulting from these cases. There was one that we talked about on the show from up in the Triad area where a college professor had poo-pooed the whole thing, thought she was bigger than this lawsuit, didn't show up to court, and there was a multi-million-dollar verdict entered against her, theoretically collectible on a college professor of, upwards 59, 60 years old. She could have accumulated a significant amount of assets. So it's not something to be trifled with. The theory is, and the reason they haven't done away with it in the legislature is that it discourages people from adultery. So, you definitely should think about that before you're out running around.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
561-8255, 561-TALK. It's interesting, Don, how those concepts come forward historically in the law, and you refer to them as heart balm torts. I guess back in the old day, they were balm for the heart. They would make the person feel better if their spouse had been stolen away. At least they got some money against the person who did the stealing.
Right. Although I hear a lot from jurors that, we just didn't feel like money could could do anything for this. And I'm like, well, that's the only thing we've got in our justice system.
Have you ever filed one of those cases?
I've defended probably 5 over the years. I've never actually filed one. You do have to have kind of the stars line up to have one that you would pursue. At least me, I wouldn't waste my time on something that's not collectible. So the defendant has to have, and I'm also not going to be in the business if it's just a lousy marriage. The other person was already engaged in adultery and then wants me to sue the husband who also was having adultery. But I've defended quite a few, and they can be nettlesome to defend, and because you tell your client, well, theoretically, I think we've got some good defenses, but here, there's various multi-million-dollar verdicts on the book, so we can't simply ignore this thing.
And they have pictures.
And yeah, if they have pictures, you got a big problem.
561-8255, 561-TALK. If you have questions about the civil law for Don, questions about the criminal law for me, 561-8255. We've got David holding on the line. David, welcome to Call the Law.
How are you this evening?
Good, David. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm curious about the Durham district attorney that is in some hot water right now. What is the gist of what they're saying between her and the judge? Are you allowed to discuss that with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And
It's a public. They're doing that right on. You can actually watch it, I think, on WRAL's website. So there's nothing wrong with talking about it. And Keith obviously can talk a lot more about the DA's responsibilities, but the essence of it is that she went after the judge with motions that contain very, very volatile language. And there's prohibitions in our rules of professional conduct from us acting that way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tracy Klein, she's filed a lot of motions against Judge Orlando Hudson, who's the senior resident Superior Court judge of Durham County. In Pitt County, it would be the equivalent if Clark Everett were to file motions like that against Rusty Duke. And as Don said, there are rules of ethics that apply to lawyers that say if you have a problem with the judge, then you need to take it up with the judge in a respectful way. And if you can't do that, then you need to file a complaint with the Judicial Standards Commission. Tracy, it seems like, went off the reservation filing motions that said that he was out to get her, that he was raping the victims through his unjust rulings, and that he otherwise was engaged in conduct that was destroying the justice system of the Durham courts.
And had the mind of a monarch. Well, that was another quote. There's no question but that any lawyer would read that and say she really went off the reservation there. But the more interesting issue is where you draw the line, because if you start punishing lawyers for their words, then it can be, I might have some briefs out there where I got a little bit vitriolic when I was writing it, 12 at night, thinking to myself, I shouldn't have to be sitting here writing this motion right now, and putting some fairly strong language in there. Of course, I certainly would have never been close to the line, but where do you draw it?
Yeah, and Don and I have not been in Durham County. I will say that what I've read and what I've heard about the case indicates that she's engaged in a pattern of conduct over time that even before her complaints against the judge caused people to raise some questions about her fitness for office. And so I remember, for example, in the Michael Peterson case, the famous case where the man supposedly murdered his wife, he said that she fell down the stairs. He was convicted. He filed a post-conviction motion called a motion for appropriate relief. And it was a big-time case, a big-time hearing, and she came to court, basically said, "I'm not ready to go, Judge."
Details.
And the judge said, "I'm sorry, we're going because we've got Mr. David Rudolph here, we've got witnesses and experts," and the motion was heard, and I think partly due to her lack of preparation, at least from what I read, the motion was granted, and he was granted a new trial.
I did hear about that. I did not hear about the fact that she showed up unprepared, but yeah, and there were also incidents where she, as you know from following it much more closely than I, there were some problems with various DAs not being forthcoming with evidence that they had, and she had a little trouble with that herself.
Yeah, remember, she came in after Mike Nifong,
Right.
supposedly to clean up the office.
Right, right. And so theoretically, that's not going to happen to that person. You're going to just give orders to copy the whole thing and give it to the defense lawyer so you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly, yeah. She's been temporarily removed from office. It's under a statute that's on the books that allows anyone to file a petition against a district attorney, and a judge can hear it and remove them from office. She's been temporarily removed, and after this hearing, she could be permanently removed. I can tell you this, it would never in a million years happen in Pitt County.
Right, yeah, well, no question about that. Clark Everett's one of the most, he's one of the best lawyers by reputation. Of course, I don't go up against him, but he's also one of the most graceful lawyers. He's got a very low-key demeanor, and I just can't imagine him writing a scathing motion like that.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen really in any other county. Now, having said that, I have heard that one's been filed up around Elizabeth City against the district attorney up there. I don't know all the details of that, but I would be surprised if, I would not expect to see these things popping up all across the state, even with the extra publicity from the Durham case.
Well, for one thing, if you're going to shoot at the king, you better hit him right between the eyes. I know the woman who filed the affidavit against District Attorney Klein, and she practices there. So, you know, if she loses, she's got a problem.
David, I think you were trying to get something in there. Go ahead.
Now, did that district attorney try any cases in front of that judge?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Repeatedly.
Okay. Since this has come up, does that give defendants who were found guilty a leg to stand off to ask for an appeal?
It's a possibility. Let's say I represented somebody a couple of years ago, and it was a Tracy Klein prosecution with Judge Hudson as the judge. As the defense lawyer, I would look at the current situation to see if there's anything I could use to argue, well, Judge, back in the day, there must have been this animosity because I saw X, Y, and Z, and it seemed strange to me at the time, but I couldn't connect the dots until now, and now I can show that because of what happened, my client was prejudiced. You'd have to be able to connect it to prejudice to your client in order to seek relief after the fact. In other words, if it was just sort of a gossipy thing or a disputey thing going on between the prosecutor and the judge, but it didn't have a substantive effect on your client or on the outcome of the case, then I think it'd be tough to undo a verdict based on that.
I got you.
And I think substantively the opposite has been happening, where guys are getting off, and that's what she's angry about, because Judge Hudson has said, you've hid this evidence, this person, I'm dismissing this case. So, including the guy who, I think, a horrible murderer got up as a result of that. So,
yeah, and some of Judge Hudson's rulings may or may not be correct. Some of those are arguable, maybe at the farther limits of some of the discovery rules. But if she has a question about that, there's a place you take it, and that's called the Court of Appeals.
right.
And if they reverse it, they reverse it. If they don't, you just move on. It's another case, it's another day. Problem when prosecutors and defense lawyers in criminal cases, and then plaintiffs' lawyers and defense lawyers in civil cases, when they get themselves all personally wrapped up in it.
Right, yeah. You can't do that. I mean, obviously, you and I both had to learn ultimately that if you're going to carry the anger around with you at the different participants in a trial, you're not going to last long.
Gotcha.
David,
Okay,
we're all
well-
David. Thank you.
Thank you.
561-8255, 561-TALK. If you have questions about the criminal law for me or questions about the civil law for Don, we invite you to give us a call, 561-8255. Don, you, I'm sure, remember Louis Gaylord, a very famous lawyer here in Pitt County.
Absolutely.
And I
Went to church with him.
I was told one time that he shared with his clients that you can hire me to represent your interests, but you cannot hire me to hate whom you hate or love whom you love.
That's a good quote.
Mr. Gaylord, he was excellent lawyer here in Pitt County.
He was
and,
recently honored down there at the courthouse.
Yes, he was, with the portrait hanging.
Yeah.
Next to his father.
I didn't get to attend. It's too bad. You know, he was exactly what you visualize when you think of a lawyer from that era. Big, tall guy with a booming voice. Just always seemed to say the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, I was at the portrait hanging ceremony, and it was quite an honor. Just a lot to learn as somebody younger. He's 94. We're in our 40s. He has 50 years on us. What can you learn from a guy like that?
Right. Yeah, a lot.
561-8255, 561-TALK. We've got Dennis holding on the line. Dennis, welcome to Call the Law.
Thank you. This call is for Dawn.
All righty.
This is an insurance call. After Hurricane Irene,
Mm-hmm.
our insurance company was great. But our above-ground pool that was destroyed, we were supposed to get such and such a dollar amount for it on our first draft.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of our sheds, where we keep lawnmower and stuff like that, we were going to get money for that. And on our second draw, which was, they call PWI, paid when completed or something, we had things done. They said instead of $3,800 for our above-ground pool, they were going to give us $1,700, and we had to pay the pool company and then send them the receipt, and that wouldn't even pay for the frame for the pool, let alone the filter and everything else. And then we had to show them a receipt for our shed, or it was the metal shed, not our big shed, for the metal shed for $500-something. We have to buy that and then send them the receipt to get our final payment on that. Other than that, the insurance company has been great.
Yeah, what's happened there is actually you're fortunate in some ways. Not all policies have what's called replacement cost coverage. Replacement cost is where the insurance company agrees to pay you the amount that it would cost to replace whatever gets damaged in the storm. A lot of people just have the fair market value cost, where they just pay you what it was worth, which can be a completely different ballgame. So, for example, with your pool, if you did not have replacement costs, then all you would be entitled to is the depreciated value of what somebody would give you for a used above-ground pool, and as you can imagine, that's not going to be as much as it costs for you to go get a new one and have it installed. So, the catch with replacement cost is that you'll see in your policy, and they're all required to be standardized by the Commissioner of Insurance, so I'm fairly certain your policy would have this in it. There's a provision that says that in order to get paid replacement costs, you'll be paid the depreciated value, so what that pool's worth just sitting there. And then you have to get it replaced, and then when you demonstrate to them that you actually did, then they'll give you the money for it. And the reason they do that, the theory behind it is they don't want you to collect the cash and then say, I didn't like that above ground pool anyway.
Sure. We had all our siding redone under the same procedure. We had our roof redone under the same procedure. We had all the interior, all the repairs were done under the same procedure, and we didn't have a problem. We got all the money back after we have new siding on the house, after we had the new roof. But for some reason, when it came to the pool, the last part of the claim, because we were very busy because we're contractors, after the last part of the claim, they decided that we needed to send them receipts that said we bought a new pool and bought a new shed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they're technically correct there, that in order to get now they have to pay you the depreciated value right away.
They did.
But after they do that, then they can wait and only after you give receipts pay you the balance of it. And to make you feel better, Dennis, I had some pretty good damage in Irene. For the first time in a while, I've been pretty lucky in most of the hurricanes, but got hit pretty good in Irene. And I had my floor replaced with the exact same. I mean, it looks identical in pictures to what was down there before. so that I wouldn't have to hassle with this company and I'd get all my money, and I never got it. They screwed me out of like $500, and I just moved on because they came out, and I think what may have happened to you is at the beginning their job was to wipe these claims out. They were all busy as heck. The easiest way to do it is start cutting checks. And, we had people cutting checks for us to get our driveway fixed, cutting checks to get debris removed. And then once they got a little breathing room and they could hassle you, then they were being technical about the contract. So I think that's what's happened to you.
We didn't have that problem. I mean, they've been fully cooperative. Everything that has happened has been an upgrade, 100% upgrade to our property.
Right.
There hasn't been anything like you're talking about, the cutting checks and okay, now we have breathing room. It's kind of weird why it would come down to the last things after, a $23,000 claim, why it would come down to these last two little things.
How much is it they owe you, Dennis?
They have $1,700 left on the pool and $600 left on the shed.
So, Don, $2,300, they can file on small claims if they want to, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're dragging their feet on getting you the rest of that money, then you can go downtown, and the small claims process is fairly easy. And we've given the website address a million times on the show for the North Carolina court system AOC forms. You can go right there, get a complaint for money owed, sue the insurance company, and that gets their attention pretty quickly.
Yeah,
they've been great. I was just wondering, we've been really happy with everything they've done. I was just wondering if there was something that, I was missing. We don't need to file small claims. We're very happy with all the things that happened.
Yeah, well then, no, I don't think you're missing anything. I think they're just paying on the policy the way that the policy reads, and they just had more time to do it the way that it's technically supposed to be done after your claim got toward the end.
That's 180 days, and that's the end of it?
Yeah, the 180 days is the deadline to file what's called a proof of loss. But if you're that far along as you've described, you've effectively done that. They wouldn't pay you all that money without being satisfied that you had done what you needed to do to prove your loss.
Okay, and in closing, Keith,
yes, sir.
Have you ever been on the opposite side of Clark Everett?
Have I ever been on the opposite side of Clark Everett?
Keith?
Yes.
Yes.
But I haven't.
You have never been on the opposite side of Clark Everett?
Don's a civil lawyer. Clark is a criminal prosecutor.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. This was like just closing for Keith.
Yeah, I'm a criminal lawyer, so yeah, I've been on the opposite side of Clark. Don has not, but I certainly have. I've tried lots of cases here.
Okay.
All right, Dennis?
All right, buddy.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
561-8255, 561-TALK. Interesting article down in the paper. Police, man shot while buying pot.
Ooh, yeah, that tends to happen.
Roanoke Rapids
reasons not to buy pot.
Roanoke Rapids man shot on Saturday as he was trying to buy marijuana. The incident occurred at 6:24 p.m. The man told officers two men came up behind him, demanded his money. He began to run away, and he was shot. And where was he shot? In the left buttocks.
Ow. Even worse. Insult to injury.
I guess if you're going to buy drugs, it always comes back to bite you in the end.
He found that just so he could read that later.
561-8255, 561-TALK. We've got Bobby on the line, or
maybe Bonnie.
Bonnie, I'm sorry. Bonnie, we've got you on the line. We've got about 2 minutes for you, Bonnie, so go ahead real quick with your question.
Okay, my question is about abandonment of marriage and alimony. How does that work?
Okay.
Abandonment from a marriage.
Right. Well, neither Don nor I practice domestic law at this point, but hypothetically, as I understand it, if you have a husband and a wife, the husband abandons the marriage, walks out, and the wife was dependent on the husband for her living, for her income. The husband made all the money and she stayed home, or she just had a small part-time job and the husband made most of the money, then the wife is going to be in a position where she can argue that the husband has committed fault, that she was a dependent spouse, and so she's entitled to alimony or support payments from him for a certain period of time during the separation and then after their divorce.
Right.
But it's not going to be enough to really satisfy the wife. In other words, the wife is still going to have to go out and get a job because the court is probably not going to order enough alimony to make it just like it was before the husband left. plus whatever the court orders with alimony typically is going to have a time limit on it, and so the wife is going to have to get herself to the place where she's got her own career and she's able to support herself.
Right, okay, I understand that, but what percentage do you think that's possible for that to actually happen even after separation and divorce, which divorce is just taking place?
Right. Well, we would need a domestic lawyer here to know, but general observation is that it's not ordered as much as you would think.
That's what I thought, too. Okay. And so that goes in with the abandonment also.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I guess so. That's good enough answer, okay?
All right.
Thanks,
Bonnie.
Bonnie, appreciate your call tonight. Don, a lot of great callers tonight.
Yeah, we had a full slate.
We've been rocking and rolling. We appreciate everybody that's been calling in. Coming to the end of our show, Don, anything in the charity corner for us tonight?
I don't have anything in the charity corner. I'm sorry. I was so excited about my book that I just...
Quick plug for Don's book again. Published author of Personal Injury Practice in North Carolina. Go out and get it, ncaj.com. Also, quick plug for our friends at Habitat for Humanity of Pitt County. Call them, volunteer. Lots of great opportunities they have here. 758-2947. Hey, that brings us to the end of another great show here on Call the Law. Thanks to everyone in our TV and radio audience for watching and listening. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you again next Tuesday night here on Call the Law.
Call the Law has been brought to you by Keith Williams from the law offices of Keith A. Williams, online at williamslawonline.com. And by Don Higley of the Lanier Law Group, online at lanierlawgroup.com. And join us again next Tuesday night at 6:30 for Call the Law.